Hi, my name is Laura and I'm 29 years old. I have a daughter, Evie, and have never been diagnosed or labelled. However, I've been treated for severe depression and social anxiety disorder over the years. This is my story. I became pregnant for the first time when I was just 15 years old. I had been suffering with depression for as long as I can remember. I had attempted suicide and felt completely alone in the world. I think a part of me wanted to be a mum and have someone to love. My daughter Jasmine was beautiful, and having her, I finally felt I had a purpose in life and was no longer alone. That soon changed when Jasmine was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy type 1 and died at just 3 months and 4 days old. After Jasmine passed away, my life was empty again. I tried my best not to grieve. As far as I was concerned, there was nothing here for me, and I began down a very destructive path. I had an opportunity, and so I moved away to Canada. It was there I became heavily dependent on drugs and alcohol and married a man who was heavily involved in drugs and crime. A couple of years later, I decided to leave my husband and move back to the UK, and soon started working as a care support worker in a private mental health hospital, where most of the staff were foreign, which made it difficult to communicate with each other. The residents had behavioural issues, and I often found myself in vulnerable situations. I'd been attacked a few times and at one point had my wrist broken. This meant I was off work for a while and struggled financially. During one of my shifts, a male colleague followed me into the bathroom and opened the door, exposing me. He then told the other colleagues what he had seen, and it became a joke among the male staff. I complained to my manager but received very little support, and had to continue working with this man. At the time, I was living with my sister and her baby boy. I started to notice I wasn't feeling myself and went to the GP and was prescribed medication. Once again, I started to act out through drugs and alcohol and became involved with the wrong crowd. At 22, I became pregnant for the second time. After Jasmine, I found it hard to acknowledge this pregnancy and felt as if it was reopening that wound I tried to run away from. After the incident at work involving the male staff, I became incredibly anxious and paranoid about what everyone was saying about me and felt as if someone was constantly watching. I was struggling financially, which meant that I'd skip meals to provide enough money for the rent and bills. The paranoia became worse, and I convinced myself that someone was following me and something was hiding amongst the shadows. I'd run to work most days and would lock myself in the office. I'd sit and cry and scratch, pull my hair out and bite my nails before sneaking out and running all the way back home again. Eventually I started to avoid work and felt really ill, often calling in sick, which resulted in less pay. One day I had an argument with my sister, and it was as if a bomb had gone off in my head. I ran up to my room, the place I felt safe, and barricaded myself in. I didn't eat or drink for 7 days and refused to speak to anyone. I had lost all control. My sister contacted the GPs, and doctors from St Cadoc's explained that I was severely unwell and desperately needed to go into hospital for treatment. They came and got me, and when I left my room, I saw my face in the mirror for the first time in days. It was covered in scabs. I'd scratched myself so much that my nails had worn down, and my legs were covered in bruises where I would repeatedly punch myself. I was a complete mess. I was an inpatient for 10 weeks. I joined in with talking therapy and relaxation groups. My eating difficulties were tackled, and for the first time, I allowed myself to grieve for Jasmine. While I was a patient there, I felt my baby kick and move for the first time, and this was a huge turning point for me. I accepted my pregnancy, and those kicks made me realise this baby was real and needed a mum. I had to get better. The staff helped me to discover myself, and I slowly became human again. I even made a friend on the ward who I'm still in contact with today. When I left, I still faced the stress of reality. There was still a lot of work to be done. I had an incredible CPN who would go above and beyond her duty to help me. She would visit me visit me every day just to make sure I got myself out of bed and managed the smallest of tasks. She supported me to set myself up financially and helped me with my housing issues. My relationship with the father of the baby was very controlling. He and his family became very unsupportive and aggressive, which added to my stress. When I was just 8 months pregnant, we had an argument whilst driving in the car, and at one point it escalated and he tried to push me out of it whilst it was still moving. He made me get out of the car in the middle of a busy road and watched me and wished me dead, leaving me at the side of the road with all my luggage and my then 1-year-old nephew. He later blamed me for the incident and told me I had caused him to suffer flashbacks of his previous car accident. This really scared me, so I ended our relationship, which made him and his family very angry, and I received continuous abuse via email and text messages. I agreed he could be present at the birth, but stood by that I no longer wanted a relationship. Due to health complications, I was booked to be induced early. The labour was horrendous. It came on really quickly and I was in absolute agony. My sister and my auntie were there to support me, but everything happened so quick that I had no time to contact the father, no time for pain relief, and I delivered my second daughter Evie within 20 minutes. This did not go down well with the father or his family. After I gave birth, my family had all gone home. I was alone and feeling pretty scared. Evie started to turn blue and was rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit. I was terrified and I had a lot of flashbacks of Jasmine. I went to visit her and was told that she had fluid on her lungs, which was due to her being delivered so quickly. The memories of Jasmine came flooding back when I saw her amongst all the tubes and equipment, and I collapsed and was taken back to the ward. I spent the first night away from her and was told it was too soon for me to be walking around. I locked myself in the shower and cried most of that night. I was convinced she was dying, and I wasn't meant to be a mum. I felt like I was being punished. The next day, her father and his family pushed their way into the ward and came to my bedside to abuse me. Eventually, they were removed by security. 6 days later, Evie and I were allowed to go home. I felt really low and was scared that she was going to die. The fear I had of being followed was soon replaced by the feeling that something bad was going to happen to her. But I put a brave face on, suppressed all my feelings. Her father and family continued being abusive and offered no positive support. So with the help of my CPN, I decided to cut communication and made the tough decision that they were not suitable to be a part of our life, and they posed direct threat and no good. Despite this added stress, I bonded really well with Evie, even though deep down I was feeling really scared and alone. After a while, my anxieties wore me down. My CPN recommended a local postnatal depression group, but even attending the sessions took a lot of willpower and I really struggled. But when I did go, I was overwhelmed by the amount of women who were experiencing the same as me. It meant a lot to hear their stories, and I even made a friend, Helena. We helped each other through the bad times. All I wanted was someone to put their hand on mine or their arm around me instead of distancing themselves from me like they were scared of me. And I found that in Helena. I eventually started dating. I allowed myself to fall in love with him and completely exposed myself to him. Months into the relationship, he told me he had been unfaithful at the start of our relationship, and this left me really confused and completely devastated. I tried my best to forgive him, but the paranoia began. I thought everyone was talking about me, and I slipped back into my depression. Our relationship broke down, and I felt like the only way I could cope was to drink and smoke drugs whenever Evie was in bed and I was alone. I drank almost a litre of vodka every other night. I'd smash things up, self-harm, but I'd always make sure things were tidy before Evie woke up. I wanted everyone to think that I was okay, and I hid it well. I eventually and very abruptly ended our relationship. I had already met Chris at this point, and we had become good friends during this. The more he and my sister visited, the less opportunity I had to drink and self-harm. After a few months, Chris and I started to date. I found myself financially struggling again, so Chris and his family kindly offered for me and Evie to move in with them. My depression had been a secret for so long that when he moved in, it was physically impossible for me to keep it a secret anymore, and it soon took over. I would avoid leaving the house in case something would harm me or Evie. I pretended like I was okay and lied about my habits, but secretly I began making myself sick. I wasn't sleeping. I started to care less about my appearance and felt as though I was just wearing my depression. I did my best to hide it, but often Evie would see me cry. I told Chris how I was feeling, and he ended up taking responsibility for Evie. He cared for her and took her to nursery and also became my carer. My illness didn't allow me to care for her or myself properly, and I became an observer rather than a mum. I participated in counselling, but was continuously let down by the service due to changes in their systems. It was difficult for me to open up to someone new, so eventually I gave up. My health visitor was fantastic and never gave up on me. She recommended I have CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and I agreed to give it a go. After a couple of sessions, it was as if someone had opened the curtains and let the light back into my life. I was me again. Chris had supported me this entire time and even deferred his degree for a year while I got myself back on track. After a couple of years of therapy, things improved. I had rebuilt me and finally had control of my life again. When Evie went to school full-time, my therapist recommended I use my life experiences as a positive and work towards helping others. She put me in touch with her boss, who offered me a space on a counselling course. Whilst waiting for that course, I decided to enrol in college and studied counselling there, and also started working full-time as a waitress. Helena and I have remained the best of friends and studied together. Evie is now 6 years old and has grown to be a confident and bright young girl. I can't wait to tell her my story when she's older, so she can understand just how much she helped me before she was even born. I'm now halfway through my CBT training. I've enrolled at uni and I'm volunteering as a counsellor for a postnatal depression group. We're now expecting another baby, and I can happily say that our life is good. Evie is excited to become a big sister, and Chris and I are forever looking forward. I spent a long time in the dark. Every moment of light I have now means so much more to me. There are always battles, but I feel I'm stronger now than ever, and I'm a fighter every step of the way. I now realise that there are times these battles feel especially hard, but we have to find that one positive and hold it tight and never give up. The end result is truly worth it and nothing else compares.